So, the inner conjunction. This is one of the craziest metaphysical experience that one can have, especially during this Kundalini awakening. It feels like a lightning bolt strikes from the crown all the way to the root, really polarizing your experience, really giving you the masculine and feminine balance of the energies. Some say it's the beginning of the entire process. I definitely see why people can say this. This is definitely a very obvious experience to be had, and after that you probably start to experience a lot more of the other energetic symptoms and other symptoms. But really, I think this is not fully accurate. I think the Kundalini awakening is happening probably way before this. Maybe it's just not perceptive, especially if you are already doing spiritual practices. You are starting to stir the Kundalini. But this is a very significant experience. You can also potentially say that this is when one of the granthis, the energetic knots, kind of gets untied, and then the energy system is on a new level, and so you kind of have this energy spike appear in your system. And so the upward and downward spiraling energies meet at the root chakra. So this is kind of just talking about, like, electromagnetically, the positive and negative are kind of the positive and negative energies are now spiraling together, creating this infinite energy, and really now meeting at the root chakra, really starting this movement of energy, such as like the microcosmic orbit. The head and crown feels hot to the touch. So after this lightning bolt experience, the head and crown will feel hot to the touch. And then also right after, your whole body can feel a little cold, just because you just had like a giant energetic release. And you'll feel very warm. In my experience, it really opened up my perception of energy, chi, my clairvoyance, and yeah, really gave a lot of people talk about the inner conjunction in regards to seeing and feeling all the nadis and all the energetic pathways, all the chakras. It's a very intense experience, very blissful. I can't really say anything negative about it. It's an amazing experience, and we'll talk a little bit more about that type of experience later in this presentation. But there's also one other thing about inner conjunctions that we can talk about, which is, it's called Shakti Pa, which is from yoga, which is this transfer of spiritual energy from a guru. So guru can kind of do some sort of inner conjunction to people where they transfer some spiritual energy, some of their life force energy into the crown, and kind of awakening these energies with like an inner conjunction. I really don't suggest this unless you are with an actual guru. So now let's talk about granthis, the energetic knots that restrict the upward flow of Kundalini. Weirdly enough, I don't hear many people talk about the granthis too often, especially in Kundalini, even though it is written throughout all the texts and is a very significant aspect of the Kundalini awakening process. As the awakening deepens, these knots begin to loosen and dissolve. They represent attachments, fears, identity patterns, and unconscious conditionings. And so as the Kundalini is rising, you kind of are met at these like blockades of sorts that a lot of people are kind of confused about, like, why isn't my energy rising more and more? And it's really due to these three energetic knots of the granthis. So we have the Brahma Granthi, which is really located around the root and sacral. This is associated to attachment to survival, fear, material identity, sensual fixation, and insecurity. So really, once you dissolve all these things is when the knot is fully unraveled. Then we have the Vishnu Granthi, which is right below the heart, in between the solar plexus and the heart. And this is associated with emotional attachment, grief, relationship dependency, identity through love or pain, and difficulty letting go. And then we have the Rudra Granthi, which is located in between the third eye and crown, and is associated with ego identity, pride, attachment to beliefs, illusion of control, and the spiritual ego. So let's really understand what these granthis mean. So Brahma Granthi binds consciousness to creation. Vishnu Granthi binds consciousness to preservation. and Rudra Granthi binds consciousness to identity and control. So Brahma means creator or creation, so represents the attachment to the material world and survival. Vishnu means preserver or sustainer, represents emotional attachment, relationship, and identity maintenance. And Rudra means fierce transformer and destroyer of illusions. This represents ego, pride, attachment to intellect, or spiritual identity. And so a lot of times when someone is having a Kundalini awakening experience, they kind of get stuck at some point of the energy system. Especially during the process of a Kundalini awakening, you can kind of feel this like made up linear experience of energy moving to certain chakra points. And where you're really getting caught up are on these granthis. The chakras are already all activated, and so it's really learning to unravel these energetic knots is how you allow Shakti, allow Kundalini to fully flow in your whole system in the microcosmic orbit in the Kundalini circuit. So I'm pretty amazed why this is often overlooked, even though it's in all the yogic text, because this is very important to understand where blockages really are in the experience. While I think it's an amazing framework to still look at the chakra system and unclearing it from that level, from an emotional, mental, physical level, I think understanding these granthis is also crucial for helping one go through a Kundalini awakening and helping others really process this whole experience. Now we have the cosmic egg. This one is also a very rarely talked about topic in Kundalini. I think just because of its nicheness of experience, and I think it's because a lot of times people haven't fully awakened their Kundalini in their whole body. So what the cosmic egg is what we're really talking about is the piercing of this cosmic egg and the unveiling of reality. So this is like when you get Kundalini all the way into the crown and it pierces the cosmic egg. So once there's enough energetic rise to the crown, once you've cleared the temple of the body up through the crown, and it can pierce the cosmic egg, which sits right above the crown, then the energetic yolk flows down, encompassing the whole body. This feels like an energetic Novocaine. It's like this yolk substance going through your whole subtle body and really activating everything to a degree. This to me is the real signification of that you've had a full Kundalini awakening, and as the body is now integrating it and you're having that bioneurological upgrade of the nervous system is when the pierced of the cosmic egg happens. What yoga text and traditional Chinese text really talk about is this Brahma Radra, which is the soft spot on the baby's head. So this is also at governing vessel 20. You can see in this pictures right here where it is located. This is kind of the center point of the crown and where the cosmic egg lays right on top of that. And it's pretty interesting that this is the soft spot on the baby's heads until a certain age where the bone eventually closes up. Super interesting. All right, now let's get a little more heady and talk about more parts of the subtle body and this whole energetic cycle of how Kundalini awakening actually works. And we got to talk about the nectar cycle. So the nectar cycle really is talking about Amrita, which is the Sanskrit word for the nectar of immortality. You know, every tradition kind of talks about this, you know, the fountain of youth being part of this. But this is really what metaphysically they're describing, not something external, but something that you actually internally produce in the energetic body. So we've talked about the sexual energy before. So when the sexual energy is moved up, it is actually converted into what we call Amrita. It is then digested into the lower dantian, the Agni of the stomach fire, to transform the energetic body and the nervous system. This is this milky nectar, honey-like substance that you will really feel in the back of the throat during this experience. It's still in the subtle body, but you can very much feel the sensation of this experience, especially as your body is getting upgraded through this dripping of the Amrita. What's another huge point to talk about the Amrita are these two chakra points, the Bindu and the Lalana chakra. Lalana is also referred to as Talu chakra. The Lalana chakra is the switching station between the throat chakra and the third eye chakra. And a lot of times this is where Amrita is either dropping down into the body, into the lower dantian, or is it moving into the third eye, into the brain? And another aspect to this is the Bindu and the causal chakra, which we'll get a little more into, is kind of where it is understood in yogic texts that where your concentration is where the Amrita is being flown into. So from the midbrain into the throat, into the Lalana chakra. And one huge way to really activate the Lalana chakra is through the Chachari mudra, which is a tongue lock, which is very important tool to know and utilize during a Kundalini awakening. This is how you can switch it from going into the stomach or using it to experience it in the brain. You can kind of use the Chachari mudra as one to really get you into the subconscious mind, into the back of the brain instead of the front of the brain, or you can allow it to drip naturally into the lower dantian. Some say it can become wasteful, but I don't think there is any waste when it comes to the Amrita. If it just drops into the lower dantian, into the Agni fire, it's being transformed into the energy body and the nervous system. So let's talk about the Bindu and causal chakra. The Bindu is a subtle point associated with the origin, sound, and the seed of manifestation. The causal chakra is often described as a center behind or above the crown chakra. This is a very important chakra that's not often talked about because really when people talk about the chakras, they really only talk about the seven central. But this is one of a very important one, especially when you're talking about psychic abilities and also deeper meditative states and Kundalini awakening. So the causal chakra, kind of its place in the back of the head, same location of the crown, but further out. So it's not really in the physical body, it's right outside. And this is linked to leaving the body, astral projection, or out-of-body experiences. And when you see that ethereal tether link to your body, as you've probably seen in depictions of astral projection or out-of-body experience, or from your own personal experience, this is kind of that tether. This is what it's really associated to the Bindu and the causal chakra. But one thing that is kind of confusing about the Bindu is not really a chakra, but it is really just the point of your concentration. And a lot of times the Bindu is associated with the causal. So sometimes the causal is called the Bindu chakra, the midbrain, because that is, in a lot of cultures, the cave in which Brahma, in which the absolute intelligence resides. But once you've experienced non-duality and meditation to such degrees, you realize any sensation, any parts of your body is a Bindu. And this kind of gets really trippy to experience unless you understand. But what I mean by that is that any sensation can become a Bindu point, and you can kind of go deep within any sensation. You leave the body through any sensation. And it's just the level of concentration and awareness that you have. The Bindu is also sometimes linked with the dripping of the Amrita nectar in the advanced yogic teachings, as I said before. And the last thing I think I want to talk about in regards to the Bindu and the chakra is that, especially for stuff like astral projection and using the psychic abilities such as these, you can really experience the Bindu through the sensations. And it will feel, in a lot of ways, stuff like you're either going through this light tunnel, like you're going through hyperspace. This can be visually, you're going through this wind tunnel, or you can also auditorially hear it. So maybe it feels like you're in this wind turbine or you're right next to a jet, very loud, just wind rushing. Sometimes in this state, you'll just hear people calling out your names, old memories popping up, anything to like stop you from fully traveling through the Bindu. You really have to be really good at using discernment and really understanding and surrendering to the experience so that you can leave the body, go into the void, into these crazy non-dual space or into the astral realms. Sometimes there are other sensations, but those are the most common ones that I've come across and I hear most about the Bindu. So to really understand Kundalini, we have to understand a little bit more about the subtle energy body. And really, we got to understand that Kundalini is not a subsection of energy. I think this is really, really often misunderstood. A lot of people talk about like the Kundalini energy, which I wouldn't say is necessarily wrong in the way that they say it, but it's not accurate to how it actually works in the body. Kundalini is a transformational energy for sure, but really it's just that pit of reserved energy in the body. I mean, if you don't have a Kundalini awakening, you're still having all these energy systems running in your system, but the Kundalini really just activates this pool of energy, and 10 times, 100 times, infinitely times your energetic circuit after it is awakening. So it's really this reserved pit of energy at the base of the spine. So what you really need to understand is these subsections of energies. This is the simplest I can go of this framework, so you can understand that everyone already has these energies alive in their system, and Kundalini just awakens more of this energy. This three system through the Ayurvedic and Taoist traditions. So we have prana, tejas, or ojas, or in the Taoist it's Shen, Qi, and Jing. So the Qi in the body, the prana in the body, this is where it gets confusing really fast, is that in yoga they'll call all energy prana, but then it's also a subsection of prana. And the same with Taoists, they call all energy Qi, but Qi is also a subsection of Qi itself. And so let's start at the top. So prana, or Shen, is really the subsection of energy that is associated with the upper dantian and the third eye and crown chakra region. It's a very airy elemental subsection of this energy, and it's this light blue energy, and it really deals with perception and refinement. Then we have tejas and Qi, which is associated with the middle dantian and the heart and the element of fire. This is kind of what most people feel when they're talking about prana or Qi. They're really more talking about this, especially when you do the rubbing of the hands, feeling the energy of the body. They're talking about this subsection of energy. And then we have another subsection of ojas and Jing, which is associated with the lower dantian, the hara chakra, which is the lower dantian, and it's associated with the earth and water element. This is like this clay-like energy. This is the basis of all your karma. It has a lot to do with your umbilical cord, your mother connection, a lot of your karma. And I don't want to go too deep into this, but I really wanted to make this clear so that you understand that Kundalini is really just awakening more of this energy in your body rather than just being its own separate energy. So to understand this even further, we must look at the Kundalini circuit. So just because you have awakened it does not mean it is over. I think this is the thing that most people don't understand about Kundalini awakening, even a full Kundalini awakening, is that they think you awaken it and it's over. But actually, your awakening is now your responsibility with this upgraded energy body to circulate energy, or die-offs occur. So this is to go back onto die-offs, and why it's so important to really do these cultivating practices of energy and understanding the energetic body. So you can look at both of these images. On the image on the right is a more simple form of the Kundalini circuit. You can kind of see that it rises up and down the spine. One goes up and down the front or back of the spine. And this is really just what the TCM sciences call the microcosmic orbit. This is a way more a classical depiction of the microcosmic orbit on the left. When you're talking about Kundalini rising and the cycling of the Kundalini circuit, they're talking about the microcosmic orbit and these channels called the governing and conception channel, or Dumai and Rinmai, which is the front and back of the Kundalini circuit. So as energy is rising up and down the energy body, this is really important. When we're talking about Kundalini awakenings, we're always really talking about bringing energy up, which is very fair. We're trying to awaken and decalcify the pineal gland, awaken the third eye, really get this energy to the crown so we can have that full awakening. But it's very easy to bring energy up, and it's a lot harder to bring energy down. And I think this is the thing that is overlooked the most when we're talking about energy or Kundalini, is this bringing down of energy of embodiment. And I think this Kundalini circuit, the microcosmic orbit, is the best introduction, best understanding needed for this. And it's because as you are wanting to bring energy up, you also want to bring it down, which is embodiment. Things like the Amrita that we touched upon helps with all of this system. And before we continue, we need to talk about these 2 points, GV28 and CV1, which is the governing vessel 28 acupressure point, which is actually right behind the front 2 teeth, so like right above them on the gum, and the conception vessel 1 being the perineum. And so placing your tongue to press on the GV28 right above the front teeth on the gum and squeezing the perineum creates this energetic loop, like you're creating this energetic circuit from activating. So you create this Kundalini circuit from rolling and allow the energy to move. This is the microcosmic orbit. Very essential tool for moving sexual energy, for moving Kundalini energy, for moving just energy in general. So like we were just talking about some of these things that are not talked about in the Kundalini awakening, we also have this secret stage of Kundalini that I don't hear talked about too often, which is very confusing from my own personal experience, which is, we talked about stuff like the causal chakra, which is outside of the 7 central chakras. We talked about embodying and bringing the energy down. And this is another crucial aspect of all this, which is bringing the energy down and activating the Earth Star chakra. So there are 2 other chakra points that are really essential when we're talking about the Kundalini system and also just the energetic body, and that are 2 chakra points 6 inches above and 6 inches below the physical body. 6 inches above being the soul star and 6 inches below being the Earth Star. If you look to the image on the right, you can see that the Ida Pingala actually connect the Earth Star through the legs to the root chakra. So this is the earthly connection to the body through the legs. I mean, we can go super deep into the energetic anatomy into this and the physical anatomy into this, but we need to just simply understand that. And then in this middle image, you can kind of see all the chakras. You can see the Earth Star at the very bottom, the 7 central, even the lower dantian, the causal chakra, the soul star, and then we have the top one. Some people call it stellar gateway. I really just think about this as the Tao, outside of even your energetic body, just the universe itself. So true mastery is not escaping upwards, but harmonizing heaven and earth within the body, meeting at the middle and leading from the heart. I mean, this is awakening to the heart-based consciousness. As we are moving energy all the way up the crown, it's really this heart-mind coherence that we are dealing with, and this is what embodiment truly is. And so this secret stage that I think most people, even who've had crazy Kundalini awakening experiences, don't really have activation of these higher chakras like Soul Star or Earth Star chakras. I mean, whenever I had the Earth Star chakras, that's when I really felt embodied, when I really felt like the Kundalini awakening was truly over, because I was now able to circulate energy naturally. I mean, Kundalini, once you awaken the Kundalini, it's like this bubbling elevator of energy just always shooting up. And so without the negative polarization of the earth, bringing it back down into the system and creating this cycle of the microcosmic orbit,